In this insightful video, renowned investor and author Ray Dalio delves into the intricate dynamics of money and power throughout history. He explores how these two forces are deeply interconnected, often supporting and competing with each other. Dalio examines the evolution of political and economic systems, highlighting key historical periods such as the development of nation-states, the Industrial Revolution, and the establishment of the modern world order. He also discusses the cyclical nature of wealth and opportunity gaps, the rise and fall of dominant powers, and the critical role of education and innovation in shaping societies. Join us as Ray Dalio provides a comprehensive analysis of how money and power have shaped and continue to shape the world we live in. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and allows us to create more content like this for you. Comment down below if you agree with Ray Dalio, and let us know what you'd like to see or hear about next.
What is more important, more impactful, money or power?
They go hand in hand. They support each other and they compete with each other. Those who have money have power, a certain type of power. That power has to do with all that they can buy, but it also has the ability to influence those with political power. So, and so you see this throughout history, this symbiotic relationship, for example, between the royal families, the nobility, and the church. So you see that group of people supporting each other in various ways, and then wrestling around with each other for the money and power among that group. So the dynamic that's quite classic is you could look at the parties in power back in, the 16th, 17th centuries. You would look at royal families, nobles, and the church, if you're in Europe. And then you would look at agricultural land, and there was a certain dynamic. And that varies over time. It changes. As those people get thrown out and technology changes. So when the society evolved so that it would produce goods and services, and you have something like the Industrial Revolution, the first Industrial Revolution, you have machines, and you have the talent of people that are off the farms, and then you have a struggling for power. You see that power mix change. And so we don't see that same power mix anymore, but you still see the same dynamic. You see those with money dealing with those who have political power around those assets that are considered most valuable, to particularly the productive assets that produce money. In 1668, after 30 years of war, there was the development of nation states. Before then, it was really the development of countries as we know it, that there were borders, and that within those borders, those who had control got to control it, and there were not to be intrusions in those borders, and that's how we established the nation state. And then, of course, within each country, there is levels. There is a central level, and then there is typically a province or state level down below, and then there's a municipal level, so they each have different levels of power, and it's the coordination of those that determines how the country is run. There are two orders. There is an order a system, how the system works. So there's an internal order that is the internal governance system, and it's usually set out in a constitution or some agreements. And then there's the world order, how the world system. So, for example, in 1945, at the end of a war, which is basically a fight for determining the world order, the winners of the fight got together and created the world system as we now know it. 44, they created the Bretton Woods monetary system that determined the money, pretty much. And because the United States won and had 80% of the world's money, gold was money then, and it has 80% of the world's gold, and it was half the world's economy, and it was the great military power. The order was built around an American world order, so that the United Nations was in New York, the World Bank and the IMF were in Washington, and they built that new order. So classically, you have a war to determine whose rules we're following, and then you have the new order being constructed. After that, there is usually a period of extended peace and prosperity. Peace suits prosperity. And so there's not, and the reason you have the peace is because no one wants to fight with the dominant power. You know you're going to lose. You've surrendered. There's been the surrendering. They carve up the world. They say what it's going to look like, who's going to control what. And then you come into that period of peace and then prosperity, where then there's a working together. Usually at that point, you've wiped out a lot of the debt. You've wiped out a lot of the issues, the class warfare and so on. And then there's good working together. So those great periods, such as the Industrial Revolution in the late 1800s, or what we've experienced in the post-World War II period, are peaceful and prosperous periods led largely by the dominant world power. Over a period of time, since really 1500, and maybe before, but really 1500, when the Dutch invented capitalism. And what I mean by that, they invented the first capital markets, the first stocks and the first stock market. That since then, capitalism has been an effective tool for building wealth because it got resources into the hands of inventive people. That's when we moved from agriculture to the importance of inventiveness of people. They got resources, and then they built that prosperity. In that process of doing that, they create wealth gaps naturally. Those who make a lot of money make a lot more and than those that don't. And it also produces opportunity gaps because, for example, those who earn a lot of money, have that wealth, they have the power to educate their children in a way that others don't. And the gaps grow. And also the debts grow at that time. When they go around the world with their competitiveness, they earn a lot of money. So, for example, the Dutch Empire, learned how to build ships and that would go around the world. A key ingredient of this improvement in this cycle is the improvement of education. And by education, I mean the skills that come from education, but also civility, the ability to deal well together. So the Dutch invented ships that could go around the world, and they had military power, but they were also a very inventive society. 25% of the world's new inventions came from the Dutch. And so as they went around the world, they also brought their currency, and they brought their military. They needed the currency. They paid for things and that currency. And then the more that happens, the more that becomes a reserve currency. And then they have their military, so they need their military strength. And so you see it evolve in all of those ways. But over a period of time, as they become more successful and more expensive, they become more expensive. And newer countries come along, like the UK, then learn to build ships from the Dutch, and could do that less expensively. And also when they become more expensive, so less competitive, and also the work ethic begins to change. They believe that since they're richer, they can enjoy life more. They don't have to work quite as hard. And so you start to see the tilt. You start to see the development of the top. And when you have a world reserve currency, that allows you to borrow a lot of money, because those who want to save want to hold your money, and that means that they'll lend you money. And so those countries get deeper into debt. So you see that they gradually lose their competitiveness, and they get themselves into financial circumstances which are not good, and they have large wealth gaps, which set the stage for downturns. And when they have downturns, the first question is, do they have enough money? And traditionally, money is resources. So you classically see that the coffers are bare, that they're spending more money than they are earning, and they run out of money in the coffers. And their granaries are empty rather than stocked, so that they give them the buffer. And as that deteriorates, that worsens conditions. And if they have a rival power that's also challenging them, they see greater internal conflict over wealth. And then they have the problems internally and the problems externally, which usually results in an internal war or an external war that leads to the change to the New World Order.